So the SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, is the latest SpongeBob film to hit theaters, which we haven't had one in a while. We've had a lot of SpongeBob movies that have debuted on streaming, some like the Sandy Cheeks movie, which were really not good, and others like the Plankton movie, that film was all right. I had a pretty good time with it. I enjoyed most of the humor there and the focus on Plankton, who I thought was a fun, cynical character. But now we have Search for SquarePants, and this film is kind of, in contrast to the past two SpongeBob films, this one is somewhere in the middle. It's not as subversive as the Plankton movie, but it's definitely a more interesting story. And I think what I love so much about this film right off the bat is that the plot of this movie is not trying to save Bikini Bottom. Like, Bikini Bottom is threatened by some giant world-destroying villain, and, SpongeBob or Sandy or whoever has to save it again. It's thankfully not that type of story. Here, the story concerns SpongeBob, concerned with growing up. So as Tom Kenny once again voices the, very childish and eccentric SpongeBob, this character is kind of worried that he's not grown up enough. And I love how it's weird that, a character who has a part-time job is all excited about, growing a few inches like a kid would be. But I guess that it plays well into the theme here that SpongeBob is worried about not being seen as mature. And I think he feels that way because he hears about the adventures that Mr. Krabs tells him about. So Clancy Brown, once again giving a performance as Mr. Krabs, tells SpongeBob that he used to be this, swashbuckler. He used to be a pirate who roamed the high seas with the Flying Dutchman. So it's like, yeah, that was when I was really cool. These are lies being spun here, but these are lies that Krabs is going to have to deal with. He's going to have to come clean with SpongeBob, because if he doesn't, SpongeBob is going to end up cursed at the hands of the Flying Dutchman here, a spooky pirate ghost played by Mark Hamill, which I got to give credit to the film for this. I love how they didn't go with choosing some big celebrity voice actor to voice the Flying Dutchman, because you just know that, because that was the central villain here, they would have cast somebody with star power. Not to say that Mark Hamill isn't a good actor, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards here. Mark Hamill does a really good gruff pirate voice for this role, and it never feels like he's trying too hard with it, with his type of voice. So I really liked how he just kind of like easily meshed into this role where he's expected to be like a little bit goofy and at certain times also be the straight man with how he interacts with SpongeBob. Because the whole plot here involves the Dutchman trying to convince SpongeBob to go along with him to the underworld for this test, which will apparently, Dutchman is trying to convince SpongeBob that this will make you mature. This will turn you into a swashbuckler and essentially make you a man. And of course, it's leading more towards a curse here. But the way that I just love the journey here, the way that the Dutchman tries to stress the dangers to SpongeBob, and SpongeBob just kind of laughs it off and just kind of treats it as, just treats it with his, little happy-go-lucky nature, especially with Patrick by his side. Once more again, voiced by Bill Fagerbakke. I wish that the humor here was a little bit more subversive. I think the film is definitely tailored well for children, with a lot of the repetitive and juvenile and butt humor that they have here. A few of the gags do go on a little long, but I don't think they exhaust themselves too much. There are a few gags where it's mostly just repeating a funny word a few times, or getting a weird close-up on a zit, or, like a saggy butt. And you might have seen this from the trailers. They have a joke about how SpongeBob poops out a lucky brick, and they use that joke a few more times. They do kind of have these very juvenile potty jokes, but they kind of spread them out just enough where they never got on my nerves. And I think that one aspect of the film that helps with that is just the pacing. The pacing is fast. There's a lot of ridiculous slapstick that is thrown at the screen fairly quickly here. I wish it was like a little bit more clever and like the weird stuff that they put in the background and the odd little subversive humor that they try here and there. There is, I will say, one of my favorite laughs in this film is there's a moment where the film just kind of like goes off the reels and they kind of make this jab at Paramount, which is kind of clever. I think for a few older SpongeBob fans, that might garner a few smiles here and there. But I wanted just a little bit more of that. Not to say I wanted the whole film to just be this very like sly, over the heads of children type of gags, but I felt like there should have been just a little bit more of that to balance out a lot of the butt humor and SpongeBob's typical juvenile laughter and stuff like that. I think where the film definitely sags here is when it does get to the kind of the expected obligatory live action segments here for a CGI SpongeBob movie. I think when it gets to live action, they do try to keep up the same pace and type of humor, but you can definitely feel it lagging behind here. You can feel how much more work went into making the live action segments, more frenetic and just as wild as like the stuff that goes on in the sea setting when it is all CGI. So I liked most of this film, and I think I like the fact that it has an enduring nature, and that it is actually about something. It's not just saving Bikini Bottom and then just here's all these weird asides here. It does actually feel like Mr. Krabs trying to teach SpongeBob that just being yourself is gonna make you more of a man, instead of being led astray by everyone else literally trying to sell you this lifestyle of being a grown-up. So there's a lot of real-world allegories that you can insert into that, but it works well here by never making the jokes too obvious and making it work with material that SpongeBob already has, with like with the Flying Dutchman and Krabs and SpongeBob. One of my issues with the film is how the pacing kind of works for all the other characters, because we do get a lot of depth with SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs, and we do get a little bit of the backstory of the Flying Dutchman. But then you have Patrick is mostly just there for comedy. Even though he's a good sidekick for SpongeBob. But then you have Squidward, and the film just, I don't think the film knows what to do with him, so they just kind of shove him into all these little funny bits that they can do with him in the underworld, and then just literally forget about him. So there are some good gags here. There were a lot of grins I had during this film. There was even a few laughs or two that I had. But I think for children, it's going to be a good theater experience for them, because a lot of the kids in the audience, they were having a good laugh at all the juvenile jokes, and I do appreciate that the film was willing to go there. I just wish it threw the adult audience a few more bones here, so that there was a little bit more of that funny subversive humor, that weird slapstick that I usually love within SpongeBob here. So, like I said, it's very middle of the road. It's not as it's not as lacking and watered down as some of the later SpongeBob episodes and movies. But it also doesn't have enough of a good punch with the humor here. But I think the best saving grace with this film is just the story and developing SpongeBob a little bit and giving him a real arc here. I think made the film work so much better than just being a series of goofy gags. Even though you do get some funny montages here and there and some nice little jabs at Squidward being seduced by sirens, and Krabs believing that he has a six-pack, and the Dutchman deceiving SpongeBob, and all the little weird quirks with the underworld creatures, and like how some of them eat each other, some of them make out with each other. So, just like the weird design, and also very, very colorful. I love the look of the underworld that they go to, which is all like the green and the purple, and just it has a nice quality to it where even if like the gags were not making me just laugh out loud, they were still making me smile, because I loved the way that they look and the way and how inventive they got with the CGI, where it never felt like it was stale. It always felt like they were trying something different with the material here, and that it always felt like they were distorting the character designs and trying different gags and getting all like the playing up a lot of like the hallmarks of SpongeBob that I always enjoyed here. And they don't hit as hard as they used to, but it's still pretty fun. I wasn't angry with this film. I think I think like a lot of kids films this year that I've watched, like Dogman and Stitchhead, this was a film that just like it was okay. Like it never quite resonated with me the same way that I think it will with kids. And part of me kind of recognizes that as being okay, because at the end of the day, the film isn't terrible. It has a good message within its story about what it means to be a grown-up and what it means to face your fears. And it can have all that and still have all the weird, gross-out jokes and stuff like that. So I'd say that's a little bit of a win for a SpongeBob movie like this. So yeah, I think for kids, they will definitely love this film. But you know, I'd say I'm a SpongeBob fan, but I haven't watched as many of the recent episodes. Like I've catch like a few here and there, but I think this is an okay SpongeBob film. I think, you know, for kids it's okay. I think for kids they'll love it. But I think for adults or older fans, I think they'll find it okay. I think they'll be a little bit impressed that there was a decent story for SpongeBob this time around, and that there was a little bit of that subversive humor, while still just trying to have fun with the material. It's a very, very okay SpongeBob movie.